The massive construction site buzzed with the familiar symphony of steel on steel, diesel engines, and shouted instructions echoing across the sprawling development. Marcus Williams, 65 and still commanding despite the silver threading through his close-cropped hair, walked with purpose through the maze of equipment and half-finished structures. "Mr. Williams, the pipeline section is nearly complete," called out Tom Peterson, the site supervisor. "Would you like to take a look?" Marcus nodded, following Peterson toward the eastern section where welding sparks painted brief stars against the shadowed framework. It was then that his attention caught on someone among the crew of welders working on the main pipeline. The movements were precise, almost artistic, as the welder guided the torch along a complex joint. "That welder there," Marcus said, gesturing toward the figure in the dark welding gear. "Who is that?" "Sarah Coleman," Peterson replied. "Best welder we've got on site. Been with us about a year, but she's got 8 years of experience." Marcus watched as Sarah lifted her welding helmet, revealing a face that made his breath catch. She was young, maybe 30, with intelligent eyes that seemed familiar. The way she moved, the tilt of her head as she examined her work, it all felt like an echo from another time. That evening, alone in his corner office, Marcus sat staring out at the city lights. There had been something about Sarah's eyes, something that reminded him of Grace. Grace Patterson. Even thinking her name after all these years made his chest tighten. She had been 25 when they met in 1998, a secretary at his first construction company. Their relationship had bloomed in secret, stolen moments between his business meetings and her evening nursing classes. But dreams were fragile things. The pressure had come from all sides. His business partners had made their disapproval clear in 1,000 subtle ways. Grace had seen it all, watched him struggle between love and ambition. "I won't be the reason you lose everything you've worked for," she'd said that terrible night in November. "We both know this isn't going to work." She'd kissed him goodbye in the parking lot of that coffee shop where they'd met and walked away. Marcus had thrown himself into work after that, building Williams Construction into a major player. He'd married Elizabeth, had 2 sons, built the life everyone expected. But he'd never forgotten Grace. The call came at 6:30 in the morning. Peterson's voice was tense. "There's been an accident. Steel beam came loose. Sarah Coleman's injured, conscious, but we're taking her to Metro General." Marcus was dressed and in his car before Peterson finished explaining. The drive passed in a blur of mounting anxiety he couldn't explain. He found Sarah in room 314 lying in the narrow hospital bed. Without her work gear, she looked smaller, more vulnerable. A white bandage wrapped around her head. "Miss Coleman? I'm Marcus Williams. I wanted to check on you." Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. "Mr. Williams? Thank you for coming." Marcus stepped into the room, noting the small personal items on the bedside table. Then his breath caught. There, gleaming against Sarah's dark skin, was a delicate gold necklace with a heart-shaped pendant. Marcus knew that necklace. He'd given it to Grace on their 6-month anniversary. "That's a beautiful necklace," he managed. Sarah's hand moved instinctively to touch the pendant. "Thank you." "It was my mother's. She said it was the last gift my father ever gave her." The room seemed to tilt. "Your mother? What was her name?" "Grace. Grace Patterson, well, that was her maiden name. She never married." Sarah's voice grew soft. "She died when I was 16, cancer." Marcus sank into the chair, the pieces falling into place with devastating clarity. 25 years. Grace had been pregnant when she left, and he'd never known. "I need to go," he said abruptly. "But anything you need. Medical bills, time off, it's taken care of." Marcus hired a private investigator. The report arrived 2 days later. Grace Patterson had died of cancer at 41, leaving behind 16-year-old Sarah. She'd worked as a nurse at a free clinic, never married, never had other children. Sarah had been placed in foster care, aging out of the system at 18 with nothing but determination. Marcus pulled out the photograph of him and Grace from 1999. Looking at it now, he could see Sarah in Grace's features. How had he missed it? Over the following weeks, Marcus found reasons to visit the construction site more frequently. Every time he saw Sarah, he was struck by new similarities to Grace. The way she hummed while working, the patience she showed training newer workers. The confrontation came on a Thursday afternoon. Marcus was reviewing blueprints when racist voices caught his attention. Through the window, he could see Sarah in a heated discussion with Jake Morrison, a senior project manager. "I don't care what the specs say," Morrison was saying. "I've been doing this job since before you were born." Sarah stood her ground. "The specifications are there for safety. I'm not signing off on work that could put people at risk just because that's how we've always done it." Marcus stepped out of the trailer. His presence immediately changed the dynamic. "Is there a problem here?" "Just explaining to Miss Coleman how we handle things on Williams construction sites," Morrison said. "And what Miss Coleman is explaining," Marcus said with an edge of steel, "is that we follow engineering specifications and safety protocols, without exception." After Morrison walked away, Marcus turned to Sarah. "You handled that well. Thank you for backing me up. You stood up for what you believed in. That takes courage." Sarah studied his face. "Can I ask you something? Ever since the accident, you've been different, more involved. I appreciate it, but I can't help wondering why." The moment stretched between them, heavy with possibility. "Maybe I just recognize quality when I see it. My mother used to tell me that sometimes the universe brings people together when they need each other most, even if it takes longer than we expect." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. It sounded exactly like something Grace would have said. "Your mother sounds like she was a wise woman." She was. I think she'd be proud of where I ended up. That evening, Marcus received a text from Sarah. "Mr. Williams, I was wondering if you'd like to have coffee sometime. I have some questions about the industry." They met at Harmony's Coffee on Saturday morning. They talked for 2 hours about everything from industry trends to Sarah's career goals. She was articulate and thoughtful, with quiet ambition that reminded Marcus of his younger self. "Can I ask you something personal?" Sarah said near the end. "Of course. What drives you now? You could retire tomorrow. So why do you keep going?" Marcus found himself answering honestly. "I suppose I'm still trying to prove something. When I started this company, there were people who didn't think I belonged. Now, I wonder if I spent so much time trying to prove I belonged that I forgot what belonging actually feels like. My mother used to say that home isn't a place, it's a feeling. You know you're home when you can be completely yourself with someone." The words pierced through Marcus like arrows. Grace had said almost exactly that to him once. Your mother really was wise. She was also incredibly forgiving. She said that holding on to anger was like trying to build a house on quicksand. Marcus felt tears prick at his eyes. "Do you ever wonder about your father?" Sarah's expression grew carefully neutral. "Sometimes. My mother said he was a good man caught in an impossible situation. She said someday, when the time was right, he'd find his way back to us. What if he never knew? What if your mother never told him about you? Then I guess that was her choice. She must have had her reasons. And would you forgive him if he'd never known and then found out later? I think that would depend on what he did once he learned the truth." They sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Sarah glanced at her watch. "I should head home. But thank you for this, Marcus." As she stood to leave, Marcus made an impulsive decision. "Sarah, wait. That necklace you wear, May I see it? She stepped closer and leaned down. There, etched into the back of the heart in tiny script, was the letter G, just as he remembered. Marcus's vision blurred. When he looked up, Sarah was watching him with growing alarm. Marcus? What is it? Sarah, he said, his voice breaking. We need to talk. The conversation that followed was the hardest thing Marcus had ever done. He told Sarah the truth about her parentage, watching her face change as the pieces fell into place. So you're my father, she said finally, her voice steady but strained. And you never knew. If I had known... If you had known what? What would you have done differently? Marcus wanted to say he would have fought for Grace, but the truth was more complicated. I don't know. I'd like to think I would have made different choices, but I was young and scared and might have made the same mistakes. Sarah nodded slowly. At least you're honest. I know I have no right to expect anything. You're right, you don't. You've been absent for my entire life. She paused. But that doesn't mean I'm not willing to try to understand. My mother loved you. If she could forgive you, maybe I can too. Eventually. That's more than I deserve. Probably. But it's what she would have wanted. They left the cafe together. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. What happens now? Sarah asked. I don't know. I was hoping maybe we could figure it out together. Sarah studied his face. Maybe we can, but slowly, and on my terms. Agreed. And Marcus? I want to know everything. About you and my mother, about why you split up. No more secrets. No more secrets. The first few weeks were awkward as they navigated their new reality. They began meeting regularly, coffee on Saturday mornings, dinner on Wednesday evenings. Slowly, they began to build something that resembled a relationship. Marcus told Sarah about Grace, sharing memories he'd kept locked away. Sarah told him about growing up without a father, about the questions she'd carried and the determination that had driven her. I used to be angry about it, she admitted one evening. Growing up without a father? I'd wonder what was wrong with me that mine didn't want to stick around. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I know you would have been there. I believe that now, but back then, all I knew was that I didn't have what other kids had. It made me determined to prove I didn't need anyone. And you did. You built an incredible life. I did. But I also built walls that were probably taller than they needed to be. We're quite a pair, aren't we? Both of us so afraid of being hurt that we nearly missed out on knowing each other. Nearly being the operative phrase. We're here now. As winter deepened, their relationship continued to evolve. Marcus found himself looking forward to their meetings with anticipation that surprised him. Sarah was intelligent and funny, with quick wit that reminded him of Grace, but she was entirely her own person. Tougher, more pragmatic. One evening in February, Sarah appeared at a tense board meeting with technical documentation that supported Marcus's position on a sustainable construction project. Her expertise and articulate presentation helped shift the board's opinion. After the successful vote, Marcus realized Sarah hadn't just defended a business proposal. She'd stood up for him personally. I don't abandon people I care about, she told him afterward. Spring brought new developments. Marcus offered Sarah a position heading the company's new Sustainable Construction Training Division. I want you to build something that will last long after both of us are gone, he told her. Sarah accepted, throwing herself into the role with a characteristic dedication. Her training programs quickly became industry-leading. The crisis came on a November morning, exactly 26 years after Grace had walked away. Sarah was involved in a serious car accident. Marcus had never driven so fast in his life, bursting into the hospital emergency room in a state of panic. When Sarah finally opened her eyes on the third day, the first person she saw was Marcus, unshaven and exhausted. Deed, she whispered. I'm here. I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere. Sarah's recovery took months, but it brought them closer. During those long afternoons of rehabilitation, they talked more deeply than ever before. You know what's funny? Sarah said one last afternoon. I spent most of my life convinced I was better off without a father, but lying in that hospital bed, knowing you were there, it felt like the safest I'd ever been. By summer, Marcus began thinking seriously about legacy. The answer came during a conversation with Sarah about her childhood in foster care. What would you say to starting a scholarship program? Sarah suggested. Something for kids who've aged out of foster care, aimed at getting them into skilled trades. Marcus felt his heart skip. The Grace Patterson Memorial Scholarship Fund. What do you think? I think your mother would be proud of the woman you've become. The program launched that winter. By spring, it had already changed several young lives. Sarah threw herself into mentoring the recipients, and Marcus found himself drawn into the work as well. On the scholarship fund's first anniversary, they sat together on the steps of the training center they'd opened, sharing a quiet moment in the gathering dusk. Do you think she knows? Sarah asked softly. Mom, do you think she knows what we've built together? Marcus looked up at the stars beginning to appear. I think she always knew. I think she knew that someday, when we were ready, we'd find each other. Sarah leaned against his shoulder, and Marcus wrapped his arm around his daughter. In the distance, the city lights twinkled like promises, and Marcus Williams understood that he was finally truly home. He'd found his way back to Grace, not just the woman he'd loved and lost, but the gift she'd left him in their extraordinary daughter, and the grace to accept that sometimes the best things in life come not when we expect them, but when we're finally ready to receive them.